Chapter 38. Days of Wonder. Ruby thought she was going to faint from anticipation. I am not so sure that I understand, Ruby responded. We need to promote your album beyond our local shores, and so we have decided to go somewhere new. For a change, Joshua explained further. So, Ruby, you will have to extend your tour with us because we are going to the Far East with you as our featured artist. Are you ready for this? Joshua asked with raised eyebrows. This point Ruby almost did faint. She inhaled deeply and pinched her upper arm, before attempting a response. Are you asking me to go on a tour to the Far East? She asked, slightly out of breath. Yes, to China, Japan, the Philippines, etc., Joshua said with a broad smile. Ruby cupped her hands to her face. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, everyone, she said with a relieved chuckle. Well, you all have a week to rest and spend time with family, but you should also get packed for the tour in advance. Meryl will be in charge of Ruby's new wardrobe, so you two have to keep in touch throughout your holiday, Joshua said, glancing at both Ruby and Meryl. Ruby wanted to dance and sing all day and night after this wonderful news. She phoned Farrell immediately. I'm going on a tour to the Far East, she exclaimed into the phone as soon as he answered. Oh, now that's wonderful, my angel, Farrell responded. See what I told you? Everything will work out, if you just remain strong and positive. That's true, Ruby agreed reflectively. Farrell always made her feel as if everything was going to be all right. Chris was happy in his marriage, and that gave him the inspiration to put his heart and soul into his robotic creations in his father's garage. Lijah knew him so well, that she completed his sentences. She listened intently when he spoke. Chris realized that his dreams about one marrying Ruby were not based on reality. Lijah was a reality, because the two of them mattered to each other more than to any other person on earth. It was as if they had waited their entire lives to be together. Something disturbing had happened since their wedding day, though. Chris had received a direct phone call from Severin Castrello recently. What is this about? Chris had responded angrily, after Severin had introduced himself. Oh no, I'm not phoning you to cause trouble, my man. I want to make friends instead, Severin had explained in a leisurely tone. Why would you want to make friends? Chris asked guardedly. Because we have so much in common and you are such an excellent tour guide, that I just have to come and visit again, Severin continued in the same lazy tone. Severin, I am a very busy person, so please get to the point, Chris asked, putting up a brave front. Oh, you don't have to put on any airs with me, my friend, just be yourself, Severin commented in a slightly tense tone now. You see, firstly I want to apologize for getting off on the wrong foot, with my bodyguard stealing your car and so on, Severin stated. So you are the one who is behind that incident, Chris said irritably. Listen, I have a proposal to make, apart from coming on another visit to your village, of course, Severin began again. What on earth can that be, because all I want is that you leave Ruby alone and stop pestering her, Chris said in a severely angry tone. I would not be so self-assured if I were you, my man, because you see, you may know a few of my secrets, but I also happen to know a few of yours. The only difference is that I have nothing to lose if you reveal my secrets further to as many people as you want, but yours on the other hand are a completely different story. I don't know if I can make things clearer for you, Chris. Severin concluded. What is it that you supposedly know about me? Chris asked cynically. All I'm saying is that you need me and I need you, Severin stated boldly. So what do you say? When should I come over, because I promise to make it worth your while? Chris had thought about this for a while before answering. Something about the level of Severin's sense of confidence was intriguing and Chris was curious. Did he somehow know about the secret designs of a skyrocket and a spacecraft in Chris' garage? Nothing seemed to be beyond Severin. Alright, come over in 3 weeks' time because there is a golf tournament here which you might be interested in, he said as calmly as he could. Perfect, Severin had exclaimed. That sounds like a good plan. I will be there for sure, he added before hanging up. During her week at home, all Ruby did was talk about her upcoming tour. Oh, you have to slow down and breathe for a change, her mother had said one afternoon, while they were preparing a meal together. Oh, Mom, you don't understand. I'm going to sing in Beijing and in Tokyo, Ruby said excitedly. That's such an unusual and exciting experience. By the way, you can check up on Claude's boutique while you're there, her mother suggested. Yes, I realize that now, Ruby said. Hopefully Farrell will join me there at some point because we discussed it already, she added. Well, just remember to take your music one step at a time, and to do the same with the man in your life, her mother advised. Yes, Mom, I will remember to do that, Ruby promised. This time her entire family saw her off at the airport. It was rather emotional, but Ruby tried to focus on what lay ahead instead. In Beijing, Ruby looked out of her hotel room window and admired the lights of the city below. Everything was as she had dreamt as a child. "Come, Ruby, we have to get you dressed for the night's performance," Meryl said. "So, is it true that the audience knows English well?" Ruby asked. "Yes, that's why you can't afford to relax your standards," Meryl said in a serious tone of voice. The venue for that night was bigger than the ones at which Ruby had performed so far. The audience was very lively that night and the applause made Ruby want to cry. "I wonder if all my friends are also living their dreams," she said to Meryl, when they were sitting and resting, back in their shared hotel accommodation. "Not everyone is as fortunate," Meryl said thoughtfully. Ruby wondered what the older lady was thinking about. Later on, Ruby was surprised when her phone rang, just before she went to bed. She was even more surprised when she noticed Lishan's number. "Hello, Lishan. What a pleasant surprise," Ruby exclaimed. "How is everyone there?" "Oh, we are all doing very well," Lishan responded spontaneously. "And how is your tour so far?" she asked. "It's going very well, my dear. Even better than I expected," Ruby responded. "Listen, Ruby, I can't talk for long because I don't want Chris to know that I am phoning you," Lishan said in a lowered voice and a serious tone. "Why is that so?" Ruby asked, intrigued. "I have discovered something disturbing about Chris and I think he is busy with dangerous activities," Lishan said very seriously. Chapter 39 Deep Explorations. Ruby wondered what Lishan could be referring to. Did she find out about Chris' secret activities regarding his building of robots? "What is it that you have discovered, Lishan?" Ruby asked carefully. "Well, he has been secretively talking to someone and I have discovered that he has some secret activities in the garage as well sometimes, because he locks himself up in there," Lishan confided. "I have asked him if he had any problems with anyone, but he maintains that everything is all right. I hope it's not a business-related problem like finances," Lishan speculated. "All right, don't worry too much, Lishan. I will see what I can find out for you," Ruby promised. "If he does not tell me anything himself, I will ask my brother to pay Chris a visit and have a chat with him." "Thanks, Ruby," Lishan responded gratefully. "Just don't let Chris find out that I am checking up on him, please." "No problem, Lishan. I will make sure that he never finds out about this call," Ruby promised solemnly. When Ruby hung up, she had no idea about what to do concerning Lishan's concerns about Chris. The only thing that Ruby was certain about was the fact that she was indeed very tired and needed some rest. So she decided to phone Chris in the morning. When Ruby was just about to drop off to sleep, her phone rang again. She wondered who it was this time. "Hello, Ruby, how are you doing? I hear you are here in the East," Claude asked. He was currently working at his family's fashion boutique in Tokyo. "Oh, hello, Claude, nice to hear from you," Ruby responded happily. "Yes, I am in Beijing for 2 days, then we are coming to Tokyo." "Isn't that amazing?" Ruby asked excitedly. "It most certainly is. Be sure to let me know about when you arrive so that we can hook up. You might even get a chance to pop in at the boutique," Claude asked. "I will definitely make sure that I do because I will have some time off," Ruby responded. "Great, Ruby, we have so much catching up to do. See you then," Claude said in conclusion. "Thanks for the call, Claude. See you soon," Ruby promised before she hung up. It was really good to hear from Claude, since they had last seen each other at Chris' wedding. There was a lot to talk about, especially with regards to her relationship with Farrell. The following morning, Ruby decided to go down for breakfast before she called Chris, since she did not feel fully awake yet. "Good morning, Ruby," Meryl greeted, as she came in from the bathroom and started with her makeup. "Good morning, Meryl," Ruby responded. "You were rather busy on your phone last night. Who was keeping you so busy?" Meryl asked with a curious smile. "Oh, those were my friends from back home. They just wanted to catch up on news," Ruby explained delightedly. "Just watch out that they don't keep you from your much-needed sleep," Meryl advised with a smile. "I think I will perhaps have to start switching my phone off at a specific time then," Ruby suggested. "That's a perfectly good idea. Because your life is becoming more exciting now, and many of your friends would like to share in that. But one should have specific times for making and receiving calls in this kind of life, unfortunately," Meryl stated with a smile. Ruby phoned Chris as soon as she was on her own after breakfast. "Hi Chris, how are you doing?" she asked as soon as Chris answered her call. "Oh, Ruby. Nice to hear from you," Chris responded. "How is the farming going on?" Ruby asked carefully. "The farm is doing particularly well, thanks, Ruby," Chris responded. Ruby wondered whether he seemed to be on his guard, or whether she was perhaps imaging it. "Listen, Chris, I just wondered how things were going with your robot-making projects? Ruby asked. Oh, my experiments are becoming very interesting. I just might be done with building a miniature skyrocket soon, Chris announced proudly. That is amazing, Chris, Ruby exclaimed. Yes, but now I might begin to run out of space, because the garage will soon become too small for all these projects. When that happens, I will inevitably have to confide in someone else, because my work will become quite evident, Chris declared. All right, Chris. Just make sure that you follow good safety measures, Ruby advised. And I suggest that you inform Lijstjen about this first of all, because, as you say, it can't remain a secret for too long, and she is your wife after all. You have to trust her, Ruby stated carefully. I will definitely have to tell her sometime, yes, Chris agreed. Great, but I suggest that you tell her now, before she finds out by herself? Ruby asked. Yes, will do, Chris promised. I just wanted to touch base, since it's a while that I haven't seen you guys, Ruby explained. I am very happy that you thought of us in spite of that busy schedule of yours, Chris said with gratitude. Of course I do, silly. But I have to go now, Ruby announced with a cheerful laugh. I expect to see both Claude and Farrell in Tokyo in a few days' time, she announced. Be sure and pass my regards to them, and thanks again for the call, Chris said before he hung up. It sounded as if he was more in a hurry to get back to the next item on his agenda than she was for hers. Ruby decided to go out for a walk, before anybody needed her for practicing. Chris did not want to chat with Ruby for too long, because then he might find that he had said the wrong thing. He wanted to keep his dealings with Severin a secret from everyone, including Lijstjen, because he had a feeling that something life-changing could come from the meeting with Severin when he arrived. Chris, you seem preoccupied. Why are you fidgeting so much? His mother asked. She was standing at the kitchen sink, busy drying some dishes. What do you mean, Mom? Chris asked suspiciously. I know my children, Chris. So I know that something is bothering you, his mother repeated. I just have a lot going on with stock which has to go to the market, and trying to keep Lijstjen entertained as well, Chris lied. Well, I have a mother's instinct, but do you know about a woman's instinct? His mother asked with her head held to the side. I think I am just beginning to learn about that now in marriage, Chris stated nervously. Well, I overheard your wife having a confidential conversation with someone late last night, and it seems as if she suspects you of indulging in something rather seriously dangerous? Chris' mother asked as she looked him steadily in the Chapter 40 Paradise Days. Chris felt cornered into a trap. You say you overheard Lijstjen speaking to someone confidentially? Chris whispered. He then quickly turned around and closed the kitchen door, so that nobody else would hear what they were saying. Yes, I don't know who she was talking to, but I happened to pick up enough of what she was saying, Chris' mother said in a grave tone. Chris slumped down onto a chair and ruffled his hair. You see, I am busy with the project, and I want some advice on how to proceed further. So then Lijstjen might have overheard me when I was talking to a certain man who knows more about these things, Chris stated. What project is this? Chris' mother asked. Just something I have been working on for a few weeks now, Chris lied again. All right, remember that you have to clarify any business decisions with your dad first, before you go ahead with anything important, Chris' mother warned firmly. I will remember that, Mom, Chris said before he quickly rose to leave. Sorry, Mom, I have to go now because I have promised Lijstjen to help her in the orchard, he said quickly before rushing out of the kitchen. Ruby was talking to Farrell on the phone when she was called for afternoon rehearsals on her other phone, so she had to turn back from her exploring on the city streets. Farrell was going to be in Tokyo in 2 days' time. He would attend her second and last stage performance there. Are you not having a break-in between performing in Beijing and Tokyo? Farrell had asked in concern. I am getting a night off on my 3rd day here, but then I perform in Tokyo on the following afternoon at an open-air show, Ruby had explained. All right, then we can have dinner in Tokyo, because you will be having an afternoon show only on that day? Farrell asked. Yes, we can, Ruby agreed. It will be lovely to sample some Japanese cuisine. The last show in Beijing was just as rewarding to Ruby as the previous one. It felt as if the people knew her well already. Ruby and Farrell sat across each other at last, in a charming restaurant in Tokyo. The lighting was soft and the atmosphere was very relaxing, so Ruby felt at home. What is it like now with all the bright lights and glamour? Farrell asked. I just love all the excitement right now and I hope not to burn out soon. Ruby giggled. Oh no, don't even think about that, Farrell said with a wagging finger. Just then his phone rang. I have to take this, sorry, he apologized. Ruby checked her phone for messages and found one from Claude. Claude wants me to pop in at his shop before I leave for the Philippines, Ruby announced when Farrell finished his call. Would he object if I came as well? Farrell asked carefully, with a naughty smile at the corners of his mouth. He reached out and rubbed the back of Ruby's hand with his thumb. Of course, he will not object, silly, Ruby said with a light slap on Farrell's hand. The night ended too soon for both Farrell and Ruby, because she had to get up early the following morning to prepare for her afternoon show in Tokyo. The gardens in Tokyo were amazingly beautiful. The show was quite an unexpected success for that time of the day. Ruby felt really flattered. The outdoor sound system had been quite strong. You sound even better singing outdoors, Farrell said later when he and Ruby were strolling hand in hand through those same gardens with the colorful flowers. You are full of flattery, sir, Ruby had returned. No, it's not just me, look at all these comments on social media, Farrell said as he showed his phone to her. Ruby suddenly felt overwhelmed but happy at the same time. Can we go to Claude's shop now? She asked. Oh, most definitely, Farrell agreed because he could see that Ruby needed a change of scene. Claude was ecstatic about the visit. Do come in and have a look around, he said proudly. Wow, Claude, Ruby exclaimed. How can I afford these kind of clothes? They are very beautiful but the prices are just as amazing, she joked. I don't think Farrell would mind buying you a small gift? Claude asked with a sly smile in Farrell's direction. Just then Ruby's phone beeped and she checked the message. It was a photo sent to her from her sister Meshai. It featured Ruby singing in the gardens that very same afternoon. Ruby read the message. Guess who just posted this on social media, Ruby? None other than Severin. Seems as if he took the photo in person. Ruby was shocked and became immediately alert. She looked around her trying to spot Severin, or anyone suspicious looking. Ruby and Meshai were still connected to Severin on social media, because they wanted to know as much about his latest activities as he knew about theirs. In this way they could keep up with him according to their opinion. What's wrong, Ruby? Claude asked. You look as if you've seen a ghost. Ruby then looked at the door again and saw a stranger with a camera leave the shop in haste. She wondered if he was with the paparazzi because they have been following her around avidly. Meshai might be wrong in assuming that Severin took the picture himself. He might have downloaded it from Instagram or some other media platform because there were quite a few photographers in the audience that afternoon and they might have posted many photos on various platforms. So Ruby decided to shake out the cobwebs and focus on her visit instead, because it was a rare privilege to be able to visit Claude's family boutique in Tokyo. Claude had waited for this for a long time and Farrell seemed to be enjoying the visit as well. I'm just amazed at the enthusiasm of paparazzi photographers, Ruby joked. Ruby and Farrell checked out many outfits and dresses in the shop as Claude showed them around. Afterwards they arranged to meet up with Claude again at the following night's show. Farrell bought Ruby an elegant, turquoise evening gown before they left. Thank you, that's so sweet of you, Ruby said with a firm kiss on Farrell's cheek. Claude was very satisfied with their choice of purchase. Ruby's phone beeped again, just as they left the boutique. It was Meshai again. She had sent another photo just posted by Severin on Instagram. It featured Ruby and Farrell, shopping inside Claude's boutique. Chapter 41. Fulfilled Desires. Who is sending these messages which seem to be disturbing you, Ruby? Farrell asked as the two of them walked out of the shop, hand in hand. It's Meshai. She thinks that Severin sent some photographer to stalk us, Ruby replied, as she looked nervously up and down the street. Well, let him do what he wants because he cannot possibly hurt us by taking photos of us, Farrell said with a kiss on Ruby's cheek. Let's go for some coffee, so that you can have some of your lost energy replenished. At least I can sleep early tonight, Ruby commented. Oh, but can't we at least watch a movie at the cinema before you return to the hotel? Farrell asked. A movie will be great, Ruby responded as she slipped her arm around Farrell's and leaned her head against his shoulder. So then, let's see if there's a coffee shop in this arcade, Farrell suggested. They turned into an arcade and Ruby was amazed at the interesting shops they passed. After a few minutes they found a coffee shop and walked in. They then spotted a table at the back and went to sit there. Now you can show me those photos, Farrell said, as he held out his hand to Ruby. Not too bad, he commented. At least Severin's assistant takes good photos of us. How can you be so calm after something like this? Especially after what Severin did to you at Chris and Lishan's wedding, Ruby asked with concern. You should really not worry yourself about Severin's actions, my love. He is the one who is suffering, Farrell said, as he looked earnestly into Ruby's eyes. Don't let him rob you of your moment in the sun. Your dreams are coming true with these concerts which you are having, and you have me at your side constantly. Where did you learn to be so insightful? Ruby asked. Is that a compliment? Farrell asked with a smile. Of course it is, Ruby responded and leaned across the table to give him a kiss on the lips. Farrell kissed her back long and tenderly. After the movie that night, Ruby felt as if she could perhaps let her guard down more with regards to Farrell because in many ways he was so different from Severin. He had even met her parents on the day of Chris' wedding. The following night Ruby's nerves were as strained as on that first night of her performance in Paris, which was now so long ago. "It is going to be a reasonably large crowd," Meryl had announced in the morning. "But just close your eyes and imagine singing to a small intimate audience back in your hometown," she had added with a smile. Standing on stage before the spotlight landed on her, Ruby had a chance to look over the audience and then, right in the front row she spotted the photographer who had left Claude's boutique, with his camera across his shoulder on the previous day. A distance further up she saw Farrell waving at her, and she breathed out in relief. When the spotlight landed on her, Ruby could not see the members of the audience anymore. She closed her eyes and thought about what Farrell had said to her on the previous afternoon. She then sang with the audience in mind. She wanted each song to be a special message of love to every member of the audience that night. "Now that was a completely new standard, Ruby," Meryl said later in the dressing room. "Thank you," was all that Ruby could say at that moment. She was too overcome with emotion. "So tomorrow we leave for the Philippines," Meryl stated. "A whole new experience, but remember to enjoy every moment," Meryl said, before she left Ruby to spend a few moments alone. Chris was very excited and he wished that he could contain himself before someone else noticed. He had just received a phone call from Severin, who was waiting in town for him at the local golf tournament. Chris had told Lijschen about the robots which he was making in the garage, and she had been very impressed when he had shown them to her. "My goodness, Chris, how could you have been too modest to show something like this to me?" she had asked in amazement. "I'm always a little cautious before I reveal anything unusual to anyone," Chris had said with his hand over his mouth to hide his embarrassment. "Well, let it be the last time that you consider me as one of the people who make you feel inadequate," Lijschen had said with her hand cupped under his chin. She had then leaned in and kissed him passionately. Now Chris had to get to Severin before anyone else noticed. He had not confided in either his mother or Lijschen about his involvement with Severin. Chris found his chance when Lijschen and his mother were both preoccupied in the study with issues related to the farm's bookkeeping. He drove out of the gate and headed to town. Severin was on the golf course, surrounded by other players already by the time Chris arrived. He resolved to wait until the game was over, and put his phone off in case anyone wanted to send him on an errand. "So you kept your word," Severin said to Chris at the end of his golf game. "I try my best to always be honest," Chris responded. "Well, let's go to a restaurant where we can talk," he suggested to Severin with raised brows. "Be my guest," Severin responded with a broad smile. "Well, then I suggest that restaurant over there," Chris suggested, as he pointed to a small building a short distance away. They walked across the golf course to a small Chinese restaurant at the opposite end. Inside the restaurant they each ordered a glass of wine, before Chris tackled Severin with the first of the burning questions on his mind. "So please tell me about this sacred knowledge you have about me," he asked Severin outright. "Well, for one, I know what your secret hopes and dreams are," Severin responded with a victorious grin on his face. Chapter 42 Winning Ways. "But wait, let's order food first. I'm sure you won't burst with anticipation before then," Severin suggested with an air of extreme confidence. Chris searched his mind for some idea of what this madman could possibly be referring to. But since Severin would be paying anyway, Chris decided that he would order without any constraints. "I rather love a bit of fresh village air occasionally," Severin said. Chris simply stared at him in response. "Well, have you ever considered leaving this place and seeing how the other half lives?" Severin continued. "No, indeed, I believe I know exactly how that so-called other half lives," Chris responded sarcastically. "And how is that the case, if I may ask?" Severin asked, with both his elbows resting on the table and his hands cupping his face. Chris thought that Severin resembled a cat at that moment. "Well, I don't think I need any personal experience about such things," Chris explained. "I have watched many films about that kind of life and I have witnessed it in real life as well." "Oh, but you have a long way to go, my dear friend. You may not think so, but you do need to experience a touch of the good life, even for just once in your life," Severin stated, full of self-confidence. Listening to him was nauseating to Chris, but he willed himself to remain calm. When their food arrived, Severin seemed genuinely relieved. "So this is not exactly the food of the rich and famous yet, I must say you're looking very pleased with it," Chris stated with a broad grin on his face. "Hunger is a different situation. Besides, I love all kinds of good food. They don't have to be expensive, only well prepared," Severin explained in defense. Well, to me it is a real treat, Chris declared, and he commenced to eat his food with real gusto. So, are you not burning to know what I have to say? Severin asked after a few minutes of just devouring his food. Go ahead and make my day, Chris said. He had resolved not to take anything which Severin said seriously. I know how desperately you've always been yearning for Ruby to become more than just a friend to you, Severin said, while he kept his eyes on his food. Now you see, Chris said calmly. A while ago, a remark like that would have disturbed me really deeply. But these days I am proud to say that it is good to learn one's lessons in life and to move on. That was how I was able to see the good qualities of another woman, who is almost the opposite of Ruby. Now I am a truly fulfilled man, because I am married to the most amazing woman one could ever ask for. You see, I decided to open my eyes to reality, Chris said with a confident grin on his face. Now that is truly inspiring, I must say, Severin said with a look of real surprise. But I do know that you would die rather than let Ruby ever know how you've been desiring her all these years. A little birdie told me how you used to talk your heart out all by yourself, when you used to visit the well alone sometimes. Since you're so certain about your facts, I would imagine that you were the actual one who was watching me, Chris declared. He felt really affronted at the thought of Severin knowing something that intimate about him. The point is that I know your greatest fear, because if Ruby ever found out that you were fantasizing about her, you would lose her friendship forever, and that's worse than anything else. Isn't it? Severin asked. I'm not going to answer that, Chris said. Now that brings me to another area of mystery in your life, Severin continued. If I have my facts straight, this is something which you would not like to be disclosed at the wrong time? What could you possibly be referring to now? Chris asked impatiently. Aha! You see, there's always something which someone will find out about you at the wrong time, Severin said triumphantly. Well then spill the beans, Chris said. Severin wiped his mouth thoroughly in preparation. You see, a certain acquaintance of mine once overheard while you were confiding in Ruby about secret developments in your father's garage, Severin said with his eyes now steadily focused on Chris. Chris was not so sure that he had heard properly. He paused and put down his chopsticks. His eyes were on his plate and he wondered whether he was perhaps dreaming. Was he actually sitting in a restaurant with Severin Castrello in the first place? Chris asked himself. Oh, I know it isn't an easy feeling to realize that someone else knows about one's secret dreams and desires, Severin said, as he folded up his napkin and laid it beside his empty plate, which he pushed away with a satisfied look on his face. Chris slowly lifted his eyes from his plate and looked Severin directly in the face. What do you mean? He asked in a subdued tone of voice. I understand you are making robots and have aspirations of becoming something major in the world of engineering, Severin said, after a waiter had refilled their wine glasses and collected their plates. Yes, that's true, but how do you know about it and what do you want to do exactly? Chris asked. He was feeling seriously challenged at this point. As I told you, it is important to experience the good side of life as well. As it turns out, I do encourage initiative and fortunately for you, I have the funds to help you make your dreams come true, Severin said, as he leaned back comfortably in his chair. Chapter 43 Living the Dream. Look here, mister, I don't think you can blackmail me, simply because you know about my ventures, Chris stated angrily. As it is, my wife and my family members do know about it, so your acquaintance is a bit late with his information. He should try something else. Another thing is that I am patient enough to wait for the right investor. In actual fact, Chris had informed only Ruby and Lijstjen about his experiments in the garage. He did not tell his parents yet, because he knew that they would overreact immediately out of fear of him causing an explosion in the garage. When he was 10 years old, one of Chris' science experiments had blown up in the garage one day, and he had narrowly escaped harm. As a result, his father had made Chris swear that he would never try science experiments in the garage again. Do you know how long you might have to wait to meet someone like me again? Severin said in a serious tone. Don't let your pride bury your dreams and opportunities. Besides, there's still the matter of you not wanting Ruby to ever find out about your past passion for her. Neither do you want your sweet wife to find out about that either. With that, Severin rose from the table and removed a card from his pocket and showed it to Chris. Now, these people know that I am meeting here with you today, so if you give them a call, they will straighten out the deal with me and you can have yourself a business contract plus a good, lucrative investment. He stood there looking at Chris for a response. Chris noticed that Severin had not exactly handed him the card. Neither did he leave it on the table. This meant that there was more to what Severin was offering. Very well, so what's the catch? Chris asked in a cool tone of voice. Make sure that Ruby forgets about that Pharaoh guy, Severin commanded. It is clear to me that he will never love her like I do. Can you imagine for even a moment that he will go to the lengths that I go to for Ruby? You know her very well, so it is easy for you to change her mind. Oh, wait now, Chris said as he rose and held his hands up in surrender. I cannot possibly create miracles for you, my man. You have the wrong guy for that. Do you think that I will help you after the way that you humiliated Ruby? If you really cared about her, you would be happy that she found love after all. Oh, Chris, you're a man and I know how much it means to have your own dreams realized. I bet you dream about your shining moments of success every day and every night, otherwise you would not have been so persistent at what you're doing, alone in that garage during the lonely hours of the night, when your wife is fast asleep, Severin declared. Chris sat down again abruptly. He rubbed his hands thoughtfully. Are you trying to tell me that you are having my family watched? He asked incredulously. Not necessarily, my man. I just happen to know a few things about this small village, that's all, Severin said in a soft, calm voice. So, am I to assume that you have an informant? The guy who hijacked my car? Or perhaps someone else? Chris asked carefully. Severin sat down again as well. It's all about strategy, Chris. If you want big things in life, you're going to have to make some sacrifices, he said coolly. Chris sat there, unable to make an immediate decision because, at the back of his mind, he knew that there was a tiny bit of truth in what Severin had said right then. He needed to make some sacrifices to achieve his goals. Severin then rose and placed the card on the table in front of Chris. Think carefully and consider all your options, he said and left abruptly. Chris sat there for a while longer and ordered some coffee. He had to think carefully and weigh his options. It was a fact that Severin was not completely sane. But it was also a fact that he had immense financial resources as well as a unique business sense. This was mentioned in the business magazines which Chris had read. He decided to discuss everything at home with Leischen, because he could not make any decisions at that moment. It is true that a good investment would change your life and make your dreams come to life, Leischen said when they were talking softly in their bedroom a while later. But from what I heard, this man is a bit dangerous. Yes, that's true, Chris responded. But, apparently Severin is having me watched already, so it might be true that one should keep one's friends close and one's enemies even closer, Chris stated. Leischen looked really worried now. The best way to know what Severin is up to is to make him believe that we are partners in a joint venture. Besides, I know Severin's weak point and that is a great advantage. He will do anything to get Ruby back, Chris continued. So, do you want my support in this? Leischen asked. Yes, because I trust only you with this information, Chris stated. So then, are we going to fool Severin into thinking that he will get Ruby back into his life? Leischen asked in a serious tone of voice. Just then they heard a clanking sound outside and they both froze. The dogs were not barking, so could they have tripped against something and made it fall? A sound like that was unusual at this time of night, though. At that moment, Chris and Leischen realized that their lives from then on were going to be unpredictable. They switched off the bedroom light and Chris took his flashlight to go outside and investigate. The dogs ran to him as usual. When he opened the back door, nothing seemed out of order, but he went to the garage anyway. He unlocked the door and switched on the light. Nothing seemed to be wrong there either, and the windows were still shut securely. Is everything okay there? Leischen asked from behind Chris. Leischen, you should not have followed me outside, Chris admonished. You know I will not be able to remain indoors while you are possibly exposed to danger, Leischen said. So let's decide now, Chris. Are we going through with this plan of misleading Severin? We will just be helping him to face the truth and finally leave Ruby alone, Chris said thoughtfully. But what if it all backfires and we get hurt? Leischen whispered. As long as we are committed to doing the right thing and form a mutually rewarding business deal at the same time, there ought to be no hard feelings on either side, Chris said. So, we are going to work out something which will benefit both ourselves as well as Severin business-wise, but we will not help him get Ruby back? Leischen repeated for the sake of clarity. We will just draw up a business contract that is of mutual benefit legally, Chris said. And between the lines we promise to help him win Ruby back? Leischen asked with a look of deep contemplation on her face. We are simply going to have to be very creative, for the sake of our success with robotics and collaborating on a spacecraft creation at NASA with great scientists one day, Chris said. Well, I believe we can finally convince Severin that he is better at business than in love, when he sees good financial dividends from the business venture, Leischen said brightly. Wow! I have married a really smart lady with a heart of gold, Chris exclaimed and swung Leischen around in a circle. They locked the garage and they were in high spirits as they turned around to walk back home. It was totally quiet and then they heard a car engine start up. They were just in time to see a car pull away fast from their gate, which was a reasonable distance down the driveway. Ruby and Farrell were very happy about finally having time to themselves in the Philippines. Ruby's schedule had been very hectic with concerts twice a day at small venues in different places, and Farrell had serious business engagements for 3 days straight. "Let's make the most of these 3 days," Farrell said when they were sitting at an outdoor restaurant having tea. The water in the distance looked tranquil and inviting. The tree under which they were sitting provided shade, and a slight breeze was in the air, blowing its branches gently. "I am going to sleep late tomorrow and spend the rest of the day exploring with you," Ruby said. She still could not believe that nothing negative had occurred between them yet. Was it possible to love completely and not get hurt? "That's an amazing arrangement," Farrell agreed. "We have to go and look up some fountains first thing tomorrow." "Oh, will we?" Ruby asked excitedly. "Yes. It will be a most unforgettable experience," Farrell said with a dreamy look in his eyes, as he kissed the back of Ruby's hand. Ruby suddenly had a flashback of the day when she and Severin had spent time amongst the fountains on that island. It was so long ago, but the memory still hurt. Was history about to repeat itself? She wondered. "So what are you thinking about now?" Farrell asked. "Remember what I said about not allowing any obstacle to steal your moment of victory?" Ruby shook herself up immediately. It was as if Farrell could read her thoughts. "I promise to dwell on the moments of victory and focus on the happy moments instead," she said with a shy smile. Back in her hotel room later, Ruby was busy going through some new dresses that she had bought when her phone rang. She did not really feel like answering, because she was having so much fun and didn't want anything to disturb her peace. When she picked up the phone, she noticed that it was Giselle's number. What now? Ruby wondered. Had Severin gotten a hold of Giselle? Chapter 44. Team Success. "Hi Giselle, how nice of you to call," Ruby exclaimed. "Hi Ruby. I am so excited about your album. I understand you are promoting it currently." "Yes, I am in the Philippines at the moment. I only have one show left, and that's on Friday night," Ruby said. "I would like to come over and spend some time there on holiday, because I am on a 2-week break." "You say that you will be there until Friday only, or will you stay longer?" Giselle asked. "I am leaving on Saturday evening. It would be really nice if you could come. If you arrived soon enough, we might even sing a duet on Friday night," Ruby suggested. "That sounds like a splendid idea. Talk to your manager about it and I will make my plans to be there as soon as possible," Giselle said excitedly. When Ruby hung up, she really felt happy to be able to do that for Giselle, for old time's sake. "Surely Joshua will see the point," she said to her image in the mirror, as she held one of the new dresses in front of her. The following 2 days sped past with Ruby and Farrell going to various fountains and river streams. "You should capture every moment in your heart as well as on camera, and in the future you should not allow anything to cloud your good memories," Farrell said when they were on a small boat together. "That is a perfectly good assignment for the future, thank you," Ruby responded. "It is all just so perfect here. I wish time could stand still." Farrell leaned over and gave her a long, slow kiss. Ruby felt enraptured by the moment. There were no rude interruptions, only peace and quiet. When they reached the other side of the shore, Farrell reached out to touch Ruby's hair. "Look, there's something in your braid here," he said. Ruby reached up to feel for herself and their hands touched. It felt as if there was a flame of fire coming from his hands whenever their hands touched by accident. "Look here," Farrell said, holding a brilliant diamond ring on the tip of his finger. He had pretended to take it from her hair. "What's that?" Ruby asked, and she held her breath. "Ruby, you have made me so happy in the time that we have known each other. I don't think I need any further amount of time to realize that you are the person that I was meant to be with for the rest of my life," Farrell said, bending on one knee. "I know that you're my soulmate. Will you share the rest of my time on Earth with me?" he asked with the most sincere expression in his eyes. "Oh Farrell, you're amazing," Ruby exclaimed with tears in her eyes. "You have been there for me through so many trials and difficulties. I cannot think of anyone else I would rather spend the rest of my life with," she said, still wiping the tears from her eyes. "Then I am the happiest man on earth, because I have caused you to cry tears of joy and not pain," Farrell said. He then rose and kissed the tears from her cheeks, before he slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her fully on the lips again. Ruby felt as if her heart was bursting with joy. When they arrived back in the foyer of Ruby's hotel, they ran into Meryl. "I have been searching for you everywhere," she exclaimed. "You left your phones behind and it was hectic, because Chris wants to speak to you urgently, and your brother also wants you to call him back urgently." "Oh boy, what's wrong back home?" Ruby asked worriedly as she took both her phones from Meryl. "Oh my goodness," Meryl exclaimed suddenly. What is that on your finger? Is it an engagement ring? Just then Giselle came in at the door of the hotel, dragging her suitcase. She stopped and held out her arms to Ruby. So here you are, she said with a delighted laugh. And did I hear something about an engagement? Hi Giselle, Ruby said and gave her a tight hug. So let me have a look, Giselle demanded as she took and inspected Ruby's left hand. Yes, you heard right, and there is the special gentleman, Ruby said smiling as she gestured to Farrell with a slight blush. How nice to finally meet you, Giselle said, as she held out her hand to Farrell. He smiled warmly and shook hands with her. Now remember that no matter what those calls are about, we have to celebrate your great news tonight, Meryl said. Congratulations both of you, she said and gave Ruby and Farrell each a hug, before she rushed out the door. I have to get to my room. See you in a bit, Giselle said with a big smile, before she headed towards the reception desk. I will be with you just now, Ruby called after Giselle. Then she took Farrell's hand and walked over to a couch with him. I wonder what these calls are about, she said to him. Don't expect the worst, just remember to keep your inner peace and everything will be all right, he said. Thank you, dear, Ruby said and gave Farrell a quick hug before returning her brother Manuel's call. Ruby. How nice to hear your voice, Manuel said, with an excited note in his voice. How's Manila? He asked. Ruby heaved a sigh of relief. It is just a super wonderful city, Manuel. How is everyone at home? Ruby asked. Everyone is just fine. I wanted to talk about the conversation we had about a year ago, Manuel said in a more serious tone. Oh, what do you mean? Is this about that secret dream you told me about? Ruby asked with a frown. Yes. I have been writing and doing quite well. Now that my novel is published because people from college are calling and wanting to do screenwriting projects with me, Manuel said excitedly. Wow, it's really wonderful that you are getting so much moral support, Ruby said. I'm happy for you. So, are you going to become a screenwriter now? Ruby asked lightheartedly. I was thinking about writing another book, but if there's an opportunity to do some screenwriting then I will gladly accept it, Manuel explained. So what do you think? I think you should follow your heart and not let the chance pass you by, because you never know where you could end up in the entertainment business, Ruby said firmly. Thanks, Ruby, Manuel responded. Send my best to everyone at home, Ruby said before hanging up. That was good to hear, Farrell commented. Oh, Manuel's good news? Ruby asked. Not only that, but the way that you encouraged him, Farrell said. Oh, thank you. It's great that you observed, Ruby said with a happy laugh. I have to leave now, but I will see you tonight at our favorite restaurant, I assume? Farrell asked. Of course, Ruby answered as she kissed Farrell goodbye. They then hugged before he left. Ruby then returned Chris' call on her way to Giselle's room. Hello, Ruby, Chris greeted excitedly. How nice to be able to talk to you again. Yes, and likewise, Chris, Ruby responded happily. How are things back at home? Everyone is doing well, Chris replied. Ruby wondered whether he sounded excited or apprehensive, because he was talking fast. Listen, Ruby, I did speak to Lijschen as you advised, and so that's a load off my shoulders, Chris said. I am really happy to hear that, Ruby said delightedly. But there's something important which I want to talk to you about. You see, I know you are now happily involved with Farrell, but I just want you to be sure about all the facts before you commit to any man, Chris said in a very serious tone. Ruby was puzzled. Did Chris somehow know about her and Farrell's engagement so soon? But then, how is that possible? What are you referring to, Chris? Ruby asked with concern. Well, you see, we might have been too eager to judge Severin. You see, he has a highly excitable personality, so he makes more mistakes than the average person, but still we should not judge him, Chris stated sincerely. Oh my, Chris. I am completely flabbergasted to hear you coming up for Severin. Yes, we should not judge, but what have I done for him to have acted so rashly? Ruby asked. Perhaps he felt cornered and under pressure to prove himself, since he knows that we are all so upset with him for rejecting you for someone else. But I believe that if we give him a chance then he will show his good side again, the side of him that you fell in love with. Chris, what you're saying is true, but it is a little bit late, don't you think? Ruby asked patiently. Well, he is much more reasonable now and I have to confide in you about something, Chris said. What is that? Ruby asked with concern. Well, nobody else is supposed to know about this, but Severin is actually sponsoring my engineering project development and the launch of my first real skyrocket. Chris, I am a little bit worried for you now, Ruby said in a serious tone of voice. It seems as if you have built up a good business relationship there, but try hard to keep it merely professional, please. I understand your fears, Chris responded. You have many reasons to feel that way, but I just wanted us all to give him a chance. He and Manuel have even played a game of golf together, but Manuel doesn't want you to know yet. It seems as if things on the farm are getting out of hand. I will be home soon, Ruby announced. Just bear in mind what I said though, Chris repeated. Oh, and another thing is that he really wants to come out of that marriage arrangement which his parents made. He has shown me his signed divorce papers. He is divorced, Ruby, Chris announced. He is divorced from his wife and he plans on buying you Chapter 45 Better Prospects. An island. Ruby could not believe what she was hearing. Was this the same Chris she grew up with? She had no idea that he could be so forgiving. Or was he simply naive? This is so hard for me to process, Chris. I know that Severin is given to lavish gestures, but an island? That's a really extreme length to go to just to possess someone else. Well, do you believe him? Ruby asked incredulously. Somehow I believe he would do anything to get back what you had together, Ruby, Chris explained. He is doing everything out of his own initiative. Remember, just because his parents did not tell him about an arranged marriage doesn't make him evil when he complies with their wishes. So when you chose not to understand or forgive him, he went into panic mode because he became desperate, Chris added before Ruby could say anything else. Well, Chris, you are succeeding in making me feel really heartless now, Ruby responded. No, don't see it in that light. All I want is that you don't live with regrets one day, Chris said with a conclusive tone in his voice. I actually have an announcement to make, Ruby stated because she wanted Chris to be up to date about what was currently happening in her life. Oh, that sounds important, Chris remarked. Farrell has asked me to marry him and I accepted, because I truly believe in what we have together, Ruby stated in a clear and calm voice. Oh, that sounds really awesome, Ruby, Chris replied. But could you take time and consider what I said as well, please? Because marriage is a permanent decision. Leischen, I spoke to Ruby and did everything I could to convince her to give this guy a chance, Chris said to his wife later. They were sitting outside under a tree in the orchard, where nobody could overhear them. And what was her response? Leischen asked, while she twisted her hands nervously in her lap. She was actually convinced that she might have overreacted with regards to Severin, Chris said with a distant look in his eyes. So, is she going to talk to him? Leischen asked nervously. Well, even if she doesn't, Severin should accept the fact that you are doing your best with regards to his requests, because if things did not work out for him and Ruby, at least he is not going to lose out on the business deal, she added hopefully. Well, it is based upon a mutually beneficial contract after all, Chris commented. The contract had been finalized by Marion, their old schoolmate, who was now a good attorney. She and Chris got along well lately because they both had involvements in the world of commerce. They often attended the same business seminars. Severin would be making financial gains and enjoy more prestige to his name for the following 10 years. Ruby gave me a bit of her own news though, Chris announced, sitting on the edge of his seat. Oh, is she getting another music deal? Leischen asked curiously. No. She is getting married to Farrell. They are engaged, Chris said excitedly. Oh, that's wonderful news, Leischen exclaimed. But how are we going to keep this from Severin? We will have to think of a further plan to keep him hoping, Chris responded. Yes, we have to be creative, but perhaps we need someone on our side. The legal document does not cover us if Severin were to act irrationally again. We can afford to get our own private investigator so that we can be ahead of him, Leischen suggested. Yes, because he knows so much about us, he might even get someone to burn down the garage if he found out that we double-crosses him, Chris added. It's just so terrible that I have to play this game of cat and mouse with Ruby. Maybe it's better if she does not marry Farrell too soon, just to buy us some time, Leischen commented. We can always find a way to trap Severin into saying the wrong thing, like to admit that he hurt Farrell with a spade intentionally. Then we can threaten to tell the police if he does not stop pursuing Ruby. What do you think? Leischen asked. I don't know, Leischen, Chris responded. The man is unpredictable and he has a volatile temper. What if he becomes aware of the fact that we're recording him while we are still in the process? I don't think he will display any mercy towards us. Such things need to be done by professional people, but we can't ask the police to help at this point. Do you really think he can burn the garage down? Leischen asked with concern. We can't be sure of anything about him apart from the fact that he's obsessed with wanting Ruby back, Chris replied while he bit his fingernails with worry. Ruby and Giselle were rehearsing for their duet, because Joshua had agreed that it would be a good idea for their final concert in the Far East. Do you think it is a wise idea for me to wear my engagement ring in public? Ruby asked Giselle. Well, I would be proud to wear it because it is evidence of love and commitment. People need to see that you have met your soulmate, Giselle stated firmly. Or is there a specific reason for not wearing it in public? Actually, I am thinking about my own and Farrell's safety. Because there is someone who is stalking us and I don't know what his motivations are, Ruby explained. Well, then I suggest that it is time that your manager got you a bodyguard, Giselle suggested with a smile. That is a good idea now that you mention it, Ruby agreed excitedly. Farrell should definitely get one too, considering the fact that he can easily afford something like that, Giselle added. He does have one in fact, but he does not want a third person there when the two of us are together, Ruby explained. Their concert on the following night was a success and Giselle was ecstatic. We just might have to do that again, Ruby suggested, as she and Giselle hugged at the airport. Ruby and the band were flying back home. Oh, we can definitely think about that, Giselle responded. Make the most of the rest of your time here then, Ruby said before she joined the other band members. The tabloid newspapers have not stopped reporting about her engagement ring. I will have to give them an interview at some point, Ruby thought nervously. Farrell had left for Spain on an earlier flight on that same Saturday, because his business trip was over. He was going to his parents' home to tell them about his engagement to Ruby. Come along, Ruby. You don't want to lose your flight, Meryl called. Ruby hurried along and just before she reached Meryl, she heard her phone beep. Ruby checked it quickly in case there was a last-minute message from Giselle. She unlocked her phone and saw a message from Chris with a photo on it. Ruby was curious about the photo and so she opened it. There was a photo of a place which looked like a picturesque island. Underneath was a message which read, "This could still be yours." Ruby was shocked at the message. She then looked up instinctively and saw a photographer taking a photo of her. It was the same man who had taken photos of her and Farrell in Tokyo. Back home in Canada, Ruby's brother Manuel could not wait to speak to Ruby. He had collected her at the airport again. So this time you are the one with the surprise engagement announcement, he said as soon as he laid eyes on Ruby. Yes, and I hope the wedding can be soon, Ruby commented. Then we have to make a movie together while you are on a break, sis. We might never get another chance like this, Manuel suggested. Is everything happening so fast then? Ruby asked. Yes. They like my writing skills and they think we can turn my novel into a great movie, if we all work together, Manuel explained in a businesslike manner. And am I automatically a part of the team? Or are you still going to tell them about me? Ruby asked, amused. Oh, so does that mean that you accept my offer and are going to help me? Manuel asked excitedly. Of course I am. The distraction would be great for me at this point and I would just love to help you, Ruby responded. Yes, I can imagine that you have been under a lot of stress, but the engagement must be making up for that? Manuel asked. Oh, indeed it does, Ruby agreed. Farrell has a special way of making me relax when I feel overwhelmed, she explained with a sidelong glance at Manuel. She wondered when he was going to mention his sudden friendship with Severin. Ruby could not wait to see her parents and to tell them about her engagement. She was just as anxious to go and see Chris and Lijchen. Hey, my girl. Ruby's father shouted when he saw her. Hello, Dad. I'm happy that everyone is healthy and well, Ruby mentioned, when she saw her mother standing and waiting for her on the porch with a big smile on her face. They embraced and her mother grabbed Ruby's hand to inspect the diamond ring on it. Well, the ring is beautiful, but I am just happy that you look so happy yourself, Ruby's mother said with a contented smile on her lips. Ruby walked over to Chris' home without announcing it to anyone at home. She had no idea whether Severin was still around, so she did not want anyone at home to give him any alerts about her by accident. She was just about to enter the gate when her phone rang. She did not recognize the number, but answered anyway. Hello, can I help you? Ruby asked when no one said anything immediately. Hello. Is that Ruby Sinclair, the singer? A woman's voice asked on the other end of the line. Yes, it is her, Ruby answered curiously. I am sorry that we have to meet on the phone like this, but I am Farrell's mother, the lady announced. Oh, pleased to meet you, Ruby said nervously. Likewise, Farrell's mother replied. The reason why I am calling is to inform you that Farrell has taken seriously ill suddenly and his father, and I think it is important for you to come and see him as soon as you can, please. Chapter 46. Striving to Thrive. Ruby was so shocked that she could not speak for a few seconds. Are you still there? Farrell's mother asked. Yes, I am, Ruby answered. What happened to him? He was all right when he arrived from the airport, but afterwards he complained about pain and then collapsed suddenly, Farrell's mother replied. He is in hospital for tests, but I think it would be good for him if you could come, because you have a really good influence on him. He's always talking about you. Alright, don't worry. I will book a ticket for the earliest flight, then you can send me your address in Spain, Ruby promised, suddenly sensing a need to reassure Farrell's mother. When Ruby knocked on the door of Chris' home, she did not have the energy to fire the questions she had prepared anymore. Hi Ruby, how wonderful to see you, Chris' mother said happily as she gave Ruby a big hug. Hello, how is everyone? Ruby asked with a smile. We are all very well, thank you, Chris' mother replied. And how are you? At that moment Lyschen came running into the kitchen. Oh Ruby, how nice to see you, she exclaimed. Hi Lyschen, how are you? Ruby asked. I'm well, but come with me to the study. Chris is there, Lyschen suggested as she pulled Ruby by the hand. In the study, Chris was standing holding the door open for the two ladies. How are you Ruby? You're looking good after all that time on the beaches of the East, Chris said as he gave Ruby a big hug. Ruby merely giggled in response. I'm actually not doing so well, Ruby confessed, and she slumped onto one of the chairs in front of the desk. What's wrong? Are you feeling faint? Lyschen asked with immediate concern. Actually, I just received a phone call from Farrell's mom and she says that he is really ill, Ruby said with a shudder. Oh no, Lyschen exclaimed with her hand over her mouth. Is he in hospital? Chris asked in consternation. He is in a hospital in Spain and I have to get there as soon as possible, Ruby stated in distress. Then don't you worry about any details, Lyschen said, as she rubbed some warmth into Rudy's shoulders, because she was shivering. We will book your ticket and do whatever is necessary to assist you in this situation. Won't we, Chris? Lyschen asked. Of course. Let's get you some tea to drink first, Ruby, Chris said, suddenly alert and jumping into action. Back at home, Ruby's family did everything to keep her calm that evening, because there would only be a flight available in 2 days' time. The following morning, Ruby recalled the words of encouragement that Farrell had often given her, and that made her feel stronger. Manuel, let's go and meet your film crew, she said to her brother. Are you sure you want to do this now? Manuel asked with concern. Most definitely, Ruby responded positively. It is exactly what Farrell would have advised. I am not going anywhere else right now, am I? At the recording studios of the college, Ruby was really inspired by the quality of work that the students were producing. She spent the day trying to assist wherever she could. And when everything was finished, Ruby and Manuel left in elated spirits. It was already dusk as they walked out to Manuel's vehicle, which was parked outside the college building. As Manuel drove out of the parking area, Ruby looked across the street, and she could clearly see Severin standing under a tree, observing them. Ruby was shocked and wondered whether he had watched them all day long. But then she decided that she would not allow herself to be distressed because of anything that Severin might be doing anymore, because his stalking activities should not upset her. He could only look and do nothing further. She had already threatened him with the police before, and she knew how to deal with this because Farrell had trained her well. Severin had his issues to deal with because he was spiritually troubled. Ruby also resolved not to question Manuel about his game of golf with Severin yet, because she needed to remain calm and positive for Farrell's sake. Ruby, I have a confession to make, Manuel said after a few minutes of driving. Oh, and what is that about? Ruby asked with a secret smile which Manuel could not see in the dark. Meshai and I have been listening to Severin's side of the story, because Chris had convinced us that one should not be too quick to judge, Manuel said. Ruby was now really surprised to hear that Meshai, who was currently in France for art studies, was also involved with the new Severin. Well, as a matter of fact, Chris has been talking to me about that as well, Ruby mentioned calmly. So, are you not upset that we sort of betrayed you by forgiving him? Manuel asked in surprise. He had spotted Severin at a golf game and one of the spectators observed how he was staring at Severin. The stranger then suggested to Manuel that Manuel take Severin up on a game of golf, since he knew that Manuel was also a good player. Manuel had taken the man at his word and had walked over to Severin after the game and asked him about why he was back in their hometown. Severin had explained that being back there was the only way that he could feel close to Ruby, even if she wasn't there currently. This had not been easy for Manuel to believe, but then Severin had started talking about how he regretted the fact that he had allowed an arranged marriage to come between himself and Ruby, who was the only woman for him in life. It was already dusk and the two of them were the only two people left on the golf course. Manuel had then been totally surprised when Severin actually started crying and leaned against a tree. Manuel had waited for Severin to regain his composure before he decided that he would like to spend some more time with this strange man. He wanted to try to figure out what Severin's problem really was. Well, there's nothing much that I can say about that, Manuel had commented. But how would you like to play golf again here tomorrow? Just the two of us. Then you can tell me a little bit more about what happened between you and Ruby? Really? Do you actually want to play golf with someone like me when I have not exactly displayed the best of behavior in the past? Severin had asked with a genuine look of surprise on his face. But of course, Manuel had responded firmly. Well, thank you very much, Severin had responded. But I must first apologize for the way I behaved in the past. I don't know why I acted so foolishly, he said with a humble expression on his face. Don't worry about that now, Manuel had responded. So will you come? He asked again. I most certainly will, Severin had agreed. We might teach each other a few new tricks, he added with a friendly smile. Manuel had been very puzzled by this odd behavior. When he arrived at home he sought out Meshai and told her about his experience. You say he appeared to be so normal and human, up to the point of crying? Meshai had responded in disbelief. I will have to see that to believe it, she had added with a sarcastic laugh. During their golf game on the following day, Severin had shared a couple of his secrets towards achieving success in golf, as well as in the business world. Manuel had told Meshai about this experience as well, and she was just as flabbergasted as on the previous day. Now Ruby was sitting here next to him and Manuel wished that he could explain those moments of seeing Severin so vulnerable. He had no idea that Severin was on a secret campaign to gain popularity in the village, because he just wanted to be accepted wherever he went and thus spread his influence. You and Meshai are adults, so you can make your own decisions in life, Ruby said seriously. Besides, I have to respect your opinions if I want the same treatment from you guys. That's truly awesome. Thanks, Ruby, Manuel exclaimed in relief. It's just such a pity that Farrell had to fall ill. Haven't they found out what's wrong with him yet? Manuel asked in a more serious tone. No. They are still doing more tests, Ruby explained. When they arrived at home, a surprise awaited Ruby. Lila, Ruby's friend from the cruise ship, had decided to come on a surprise visit. Oh, my friend, you could not have come at a better time, Ruby exclaimed and hugged Lila tightly. In Spain, Ruby was picked up at the airport by Farrell's driver, who took her directly to Farrell's parental home. They did not want her to stay over at a hotel. The house was large and really imposing. Ruby wondered how she would fit in here. There were large, well-lit gardens as well, and Ruby immediately resolved to spend time there, if anything ever overwhelmed her. Good evening, my dear, Farrell's mother said, after Ruby was received at the door by a uniformed servant and led to a small lounge. Good evening, Mrs. Mendez, Ruby responded. You must be very tired after your long trip, so I arranged a light meal for you up in your bedroom. Just relax and you can meet Farrell's father and the others in the morning. Thank you very much, Ruby responded politely. She had not expected Farrell's mother to be so kind. For a woman who was evidently so wealthy, she was rather considerate. We can phone the hospital again in the morning, because I phoned an hour ago and Farrell's condition is still stable, Mrs. Mendez said. Has he completely regained consciousness? Ruby asked. Yes, he has, but they are keeping him sedated, Mrs. Mendez responded kindly. Up in her assigned bedroom, Ruby was once more in awe of her luxurious surroundings. She decided to phone home and inform her parents about her safe arrival in Spain and warm reception at Farrell's family home. Chris and Lyschen were in a puzzle as to what to do next. Do you think we should concede defeat and just deal with the consequences now that Farrell's health is delicate? Lyschen asked Chris while they sat in their bedroom, since it was too cold lately to spend time discussing their plans in the garden at night. My dear, I don't feel guilty about what we are doing because it benefits Severin as well as us, Chris stated. We can tell Ruby the truth when the situation is not so dangerous. The less she knows now the better for her own safety, otherwise she will most certainly confront Severin. Yes, but should we not be rather sensitive towards Ruby at this stage with Farrell being ill? Lyschen asked with concern. We will give Ruby all the support that we can, but we should still ask her to think carefully before closing the door on someone completely, Chris insisted. We can't have her fighting with Severin now. This feels dangerous, but we knew that from the outset, Lyschen observed. Can we really beat Severin in Chapter 47 Greater Expectations? There is no way that anyone can get hurt, because Severin knows that we have our legal matters well covered, Chris stated calmly. I understand him now. He was hurt and he simply did not know how to deal with it. So we can't ask the private investigator for extra advice? Lyschen asked. We cannot really back down at this point anymore, because Severin's divorce is through and he has already bought the island, Chris stated. Oh no, Lyschen exclaimed. I thought we would be able to stop him from going to that extreme. Now his dignity is on the line and he can become desperate again. Ruby saw Farrell at hospital on the following day, and she was overwhelmed with pity at seeing him so vulnerable. "Don't worry, we will get out of this strong and victorious," she said with a strong sense of determination. Farrell kissed her hand in gratitude. "As long as we're together we can beat anything," he said. The following morning, Mrs. Mendez went to visit Ruby in her bedroom. Ruby was surprised at this because everyone in the house respected her privacy up until then. "What's wrong, Mrs. Mendez? Why are you crying?" Ruby stammered when she noticed how Farrell's mother was trying to control the tears running down her face. "The test results show that Farrell has cancer," she said miserably. Ruby felt her stomach begin to heave, so she held her hand to her stomach and sat down on the bed quickly. "Let's just send Ruby both the documents for the proof of divorce and those of the purchase of the island," Leishtjan suggested 3 days later. "The tension is killing me," she added. "We have to find out how Farrell is first and I have to be very subtle now," Chris responded. "I will have to talk to her personally by phone." "Then phone her now?" Leishtjan begged. Chris picked up his phone and called Ruby. "Hello, Chris," Ruby said in a vague tone of voice. Ruby. How are things that side?" Chris asked cautiously. "Oh, Chris, it's really bad." Ruby sat and she began to sob over the phone. "Ruby, whatever it is, you can overcome it. Just remember how strong you are," Chris said firmly. "They say it's cancer," Ruby said in a more controlled tone of voice. "Well, we will come over to give you moral support if necessary, but just don't give up," Chris insisted. "Cancer can be beaten. Farrell will get completely well." "You will see," Chris said firmly. "Thanks, Chris. You don't have to come over because Farrell's family is very supportive. We're helping each other to cope," Ruby said more calmly now. "I'm very happy to hear that," Chris said. "But remember that we are only a phone call away, and we will not hesitate in coming over if necessary." "That means so much to me, Chris. You and Leishtjan are a great help to me now," Ruby said in conclusion and finished the call. "Great, she feels better now, but Farrell has been diagnosed with cancer," Chris said as he held out his arms to Leishtjan and hugged her close. "Oh no, that's terrible," Leishtjan responded. "It makes our success with the robotics work and the spacecraft building seem so trivial in comparison," she sighed. Chris' designs had been approved by someone who worked at NASA and he had been offered a position as a remotely working assistant on the team of research and design workers there. "Yes, I'm so sorry that we can't celebrate with Ruby now," Chris agreed. Ruby felt sure about the fact that Chris and Leishtjan could not then still be serious about trying to get her to change her mind about Severin. Ruby decided to take an afternoon nap after her morning visit to Farrell at hospital. She was relieved because he could start treatment soon. So she was relaxed enough to phone Manuel first. Ruby. Manuel grata nervously. "Is everything all right there?" "Yes, it is," Ruby replied. "Farrell is starting treatment soon and the prognosis is good." "That's wonderful news," Manuel exclaimed. "Now, I just want to tell you that I will remain here at his side for a couple of months. So I want us to carry on with the filmmaking project remotely. I can participate in everything from here," Ruby announced. "I never even thought about that possibility. That's an excellent idea," Manuel exclaimed. Ruby was laying down on the couch in her bedroom when her phone rang. She sighed and picked it up. It was Meshai. They had not told Meshai any news about everything which had happened lately, because she was far away in France, when Ruby was in Canada. Now she was closer. Ruby. "I can't talk for long, but guess what?" Mazaya. "No, I'm too foggy now to make any good guesses," Ruby replied. "Well, I have been finding out some stuff about Severin and he is not so bad if you really get to know him," Meshai stated. "Okay, Meshai, that's exactly what Manuel said also," Ruby replied. "Now you see, Severin and I have been spending a lot of time together here in France," Meshai announced. "What? You are spending time with Severin?" Ruby exclaimed. "Yes, because he wants me to know how much he is doing to get you back, Ruby. He is divorced and he has actually bought you an island. Meshai, do not spend so much time with that man because he is psychotic," Ruby admonished her sister. "I am going to take a nap now, Meshai, because I am very tired. Just promise me that you will avoid Severin and stop listening to his wild ideas." "Oh, Ruby dear. You are too tense. Just relax and nothing will go wrong," Meshai responded. "By the way, what are you doing in Spain?" "I am visiting Farrell and his family. We're engaged, you know," Ruby replied. Ruby did not want to worry Meshai with Farrell's illness, because she wanted her to focus on her studies. Meshai herself was now developing her own identity in the world of fine arts, and she spent very little time on family issues. "Well then, that's a different story entirely," Meshai responded. Anyway, congratulations and enjoy every moment of your stay, Meshai said before she ended the call. Ruby helped to motivate and encourage Farrell in hospital every day. When he was discharged from hospital a couple of weeks later, she stayed on and helped to nurse him at home. Farrell's cancer had been detected early enough, so there was hope for a full recovery. I never suspected that you would have a gift for nursing, Farrell joked one sunny afternoon when they were sitting on the porch together. 18 months later, Ruby had learned a lot about cancer during this time. She read up about it and did as much research as possible. She also got to know Spain and its people. Most of all, she got to really love the food. She and Farrell had also read many books and exchanged stories from the books. They say love makes you do strange things, Ruby responded to Farrell's question. Now, who are they and how do they know about your feelings? Farrell joked further. You are clearly practically fully healed, Mr. Mendez. Ruby chided playfully. Have you two thought about a wedding date yet? Farrell's mother asked a month later. We have just been taking everything one day at a time, Ruby explained with a shy smile. She had been busy with nursing Farrell and assisting Manuel with his movie long distance, and time had sped by. She did not find time to think about the future. It would be just right to celebrate his recovery with a beautiful wedding, Farrell's mother said with a dreamy look in her eyes. Ruby thought it wise not to discuss this with Farrell at this stage of his recovery, because he was still weak physically. He could decide when he was ready for marriage. They saw each other every day anyway, so in Ruby's opinion there was no time to rush. Ruby's phone had a message on when she checked it a few minutes later, in her bedroom. It was an unknown number. But the message was intriguing. It was from a woman called Martina, and she apparently wanted Ruby to talk to her sister Meshai and warn her to stay away and end her affair with Severin, because he was still committed to his ex-wife and was going to remarry